What up, friends? That's the question. And today we're going to be reviewing NxWorries' newest record, Why Lord. This is the second studio album by R&B, hip-hop, and soul super duo NxWorries, comprised of Anderson .Paak and Knxwledge. It's been a bit since the last release from this duo, all the way back in 2016 when both of these guys were pretty much at the start of their careers. Okay, maybe not the start, but it was when they were still on the come up, you know? They were still kind of younger, hungrier, and kind of figuring out their sound and what they were all about. Both, in fact, have grown a lot since then. You know, it's been about 8 years since then, so both in their musical and personal lives, things have changed. Anderson especially has had a bit of a tumultuous past year or two, especially as he is dealing with his divorce between himself and his longtime wife, Jalen Chang. This newest record, in fact, is basically Anderson going through the 5 stages of grief, maybe a bit deserved. However, you know, that being said, I do think this album showcases a very new and kind of introspective side of Anderson .Paak that we haven't really gotten to see much of, and Knxwledge, especially on the production side of things, provides an excellent backdrop for, too. Now, it's a messy album in terms of narrative, that's for sure, but again, I think that this album showcases a slight maturation that we haven't really seen from Anderson up until this point. Now, I'm gonna be real, I'm not into the intro, thank you. Not only do I not like Dave Chappelle as a person, or, you know, his comedic stuff that he does, I also just don't think that this spoken word piece by him here really does this album's narrative any favors. You know, his whole diatribe here has this very fuck you, I got mine vibe to it and energy to it that, let's be real, is Dave's MO, but I also don't think it really serves Anderson's introspection all that well on this project. It just does not meld with the tones and themes of the project very well, especially when, you know, we have all those rumors surrounding Anderson .Paak and how the reason why they broke up is because maybe Anderson was cheating. So I don't think this is the best way to lead the project, but still. However, you know, as we get into the actual meat of the project, I feel like this album's narrative starts coming into a fuller effect. The first part, starting with 88 Centra, largely deals with Anderson's denial as he is listing all these accomplishments that he's done throughout the past few years. This one specifically is talking about Anderson's involvement in the Super Bowl performance alongside the legendary figures in the scene like, you know, Snoop Dogg, Dre, Eminem, and how, you know, he was a part of something this monumental. Not to mention being there with Kendrick Lamar too, and you know, we know how big Kendrick Lamar is now alongside how he's grown in the past few years too. Anderson's very relentless flow alongside the very smooth and soulful beat by Knxwledge is a really good combination, having this very chill instrumental alongside the hunger that Anderson expresses here is pretty engaging. The guitar focus on MoveOn also highlights this album's narrative as we progress into Anderson basically crooning about how he's lost so many things recently. His entire life has turned upside down. It's almost like he's lamenting the death of his previous life as a sort of R&B playboy. Now, you know, he's got all this money, but he kind of pushed away a lot of the people that would have stuck by him through it all. KeepHer is probably the most bitter song on the project, really showcasing the divorced dad vibes of this album. That being said, though, I think it is one of those things that Anderson really needed to get off of his chest and get out there to fully experience growth. I think it also showcases Anderson's mindset throughout all of this stuff that's going on, and also highlights how he's a bit hypocritical at times, as he's feeling a little bit bitter about everything that's been going down, but Anderson was also a fairly notorious womanizer even while he was married. I mean, look at the lyrics on some of his last albums, man. The very somber electric guitar and Thundercat's background vocals also really help convey this vibe too. Distractions largely has a similar vibe to MoveOn, which is basically showcasing Anderson and how he's trying to fill the void in his life by partying, drinking, going to bars, gambling, you know, the bachelor life. I'm also really liking how he's counting up in the verses with the wordplay here, and also how he does take that introspective tone in expressing how he needs counseling. I feel like all of this really helps express the complicated emotions that he's feeling on this project. The seamless flow into the very violin heavy Lookin' is also amazing. KeepHer, Distractions, and Lookin' are a pretty great 3-track run, I have to say. The middle of the album largely continues the lyrical trend and themes of the earlier parts of the record, with Anderson basically taking a look back at his marriage and also the sort of bitterness and regret that comes with the entire thing. It does feel like, however, now that he's taking a bit of a harder and more introspective look at the life that he used to live. The twang and echo of the guitars in Where I Go really has that loneliness emanating off of them. Daydreaming has that classic soul sound with those keys that really create the vibe of looking back on fond memories. The sultry and smooth vibes of From Here alongside Snoop's involvement in all of this is helping to create the vibe of visiting old haunts and chasing shadows. The songs that follow show Anderson in thought, relapsing, and then regretting everything all over again. Battlefield is another highlight on this project, with the more hip-hop angle that Knxwledge is putting over this track, really doing a great job at highlighting Anderson talking about his upbringing. This is not a foreign lyrical concept to him, he has talked about this stuff on albums in the past, however I do think he delves a bit deeper in this one particularly, and also kind of uses it to analyze how his upbringing might have led him to become the person that he is today, and how it might have influenced how he feels and thinks about things today. In a way, it almost feels like he's looking back at his childhood to better understand how that might have influenced his actions, both in his marriage and just in his career in general. His flow is really nice on this one as well, really showing how he's a pretty good rapper in case you forgot with how good his R&B cuts are. I'm also really loving the chill background vocals in this one too. HereIAm also sees Anderson being very introspective, with him hiding behind a bachelor exterior while everyone in his personal life is basically calling his bluff. With him talking about how he's lurking on his ex-wife's Instagram, alongside comparing how all of these new people that he's meeting just don't hold a candle to her. This is a short but fairly necessary song, I think, in really understanding Anderson's hurt that he's feeling. Now, if there was any song that I would consider pretty weak, it's SheUsed. Now, it's no secret that I'm not the biggest fan of pitched vocals, and when it's combined with some pretty corny lyrics like it is here, it just doesn't work. It also feels a bit awkward being squashed between the more raw and natural sounding tracks on this project as a whole. I guess you could say it kind of goes for a vibe similar to Tyler the Creator's Igor, however I don't think this song in particular really captures the nuance and magic that Igor did. Especially because the pitched vocals and manipulated vocals in Igor were carefully weaved into the entire record. WalkOnBy is the final track that makes a big impression on me for this record, featuring a great low-key soul beat and some pretty excellent flows by Anderson .Paak, Earl Sweatshirt, and Ray Khalil. The guitar especially has so much emotion packed into it, kind of showcasing a light at the end of the tunnel and how Anderson needs to just learn from these mistakes and start living again. All three verses from everybody on this track just showcase how everybody struggles differently, and you have to deal with problems as they come, and again, learn from them. Now with this project, the entire album is crafted to essentially be one long experience. The songs themselves are fairly short on the whole, with them kind of weaving into one another to create arcs of different lyrical and instrumental experiences. In a way, I feel like this actually helps the album sort of create this stages of grief narrative, starting with denial and kind of ending with a somber acceptance. However, this method also prevents each song individually from having staying power. It's more about the overall vibe, the overall narrative, and overall sound, so it's hard to recommend going back to individual tracks as much as you would a normal album. It makes the individual parts of this record feel less memorable on the whole. However, Anderson's lyrical intimacy and introspection alongside Knxwledge's very solid production helps keep the vibe just going all the way through. The vibes can be a little too low-key and samey at times, and there were a few lyrical hiccups as well. However, it's also hard to deny that this is one of the most introspective albums that Anderson's ever released. Both he and Knxwledge also showcase a growth that can only be done by people with this many years in the industry, and this much experience under their belt. Because of all this, I am feeling a light 8 on this newest album by NxWorries. Of course, we still have to talk about album covers on this show, and this album cover I'm kind of torn on because I actually do like the composition and imagery of this one. It almost feels more of like a black metal record or something at times. But again, even though I like the composition, I don't know what this really has to do with the record, you know? Like maybe, you know, Anderson is fantasizing about he and his ex being two deer on the hills in the wilderness. I don't fucking know. But again, I like this cover and how, you know, we have just this very small focal point, very sort of consistent gray color scheme, kind of utilizing the different lights and shadows to create a nice image. I think the font choice is actually pretty cool too, how it's a little like squiggly and stuff like that. But again, what the fuck does this have to do with the project? But of course, those are just my thoughts on this newest album by NxWorries. What did you guys think? Do you think this was a solid continuation of both the previous NxWorries album alongside the careers of Anderson and Knxwledge? Or was this one kind of leaving you a bit underwhelmed, maybe a bit too samey all the way through? Let me know, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, ring the bell, and maybe I'll tell you why. And until the next one, farewell.